We're going to talk soon to another partner in the Domo for Good program, EDF. And what's exciting to me about this one is that whether you are motivated by just doing the right thing, or if you're motivated by market forces, this is one organization that combines both to create a really powerful force in the world for saving the planet. And with that, let's roll some video.
For a long time, fishermen felt like conservationists and the government were pointing their fingers at them and saying, the demise of the oceans is because of you. When really, the demise of the oceans is because of the failure to get the system right so that fishermen have a long-term incentive to conserve, to steward the resource that's really most important to them. Secure fishing rights is about giving fishermen direct access, direct control over their local fishery. It's about organizing in their communities, talking with their families in a way that helps them see that it's a new approach that is all about putting them at the center of the solution. We're out of options. We're out of time. If nothing else is done by 2030, 80% of the world's fisheries will be in need of reform. But the good news is that the average fishery worldwide can recover within 10 years. We could double the amount of fish in the water by 2050. We could increase fishermen's profits threefold, and we could increase seafood production enough to feed an additional 500 million people around the world. By giving fishermen themselves a stake in the fishery, they have an asset. They have something that they want to see grow over time, something they want to hand down to their kids. So they become the conservationists. With a clear roadmap to recovering fisheries, we can honestly say we can have our fish and eat them too.
Please welcome Rod Fujita from EDF. Welcome, Rod. We're so glad to have you here.
My pleasure.
So we went to dinner last night, and Rod and one of his colleagues, and we were talking about some of the amazing work that EDF does. And I think what struck me, and I mentioned it in my comments, is you guys use forces like capitalism and law to drive change in the world, but in a way that everyone can get behind. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Julie. Well, the Environmental Defense Fund was started in the 60s, actually, by a group of scientists who had some data on the decline of the osprey, which is this magnificent hawk that lives in the wetlands all on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And they wanted to change the situation which they had observed, which was that DDT was causing the eggs to thin and resulting in high mortality rates and population declines. So they were seeing these birds disappear from their favorite wetlands and wanted to do something about it. So they petitioned the local mosquito control board, they talked to the local officials, and they just didn't get anywhere with just the data. And so they had this idea to team up with some lawyers. They exerted some pressure, and they were able to get DDT banned, not only in that locality, but eventually throughout the United States. We had a similar model to get lead out of gasoline. But then we found that these legal solutions had limitations. They create winners and losers. They make people mad. They result in years and years of appeals. In short, they were not that durable. So we came up with a new model which is designed to harness the power of market forces in order to create solutions that work for everybody. We have a saying, we want people to be able to do good by doing well, to be able to make money, to be incentivized to conserve natural resources and protect the environment. So one of our signature achievements using this new model was back in the late 80s when I joined EDF, acid rain was falling on the United States. Coal-fired power plants were sending up tons and tons of sulfur dioxide, mixed with water vapor in the atmosphere, fell down as acid rain, killing lakes, killing forests, killing fish, even harming buildings and infrastructure. So we took this on. We managed to get a bill passed in Congress, which was based on an analysis we did suggesting that a cap on the sulfur dioxide emissions, which would cut total emissions by half, a very significant reduction, could be made economically feasible by allowing companies to trade permits under that cap. This created a very strong financial incentive for companies to reduce their pollution under their limits, and it resulted in billions of dollars in savings and a remarkable reduction in emissions.
So this incentivizing those who can either be part of the solution or part of the problem, it's worked well. And I heard a story that was being told about fisheries in Massachusetts. And can you talk, that one is, I'm from New England, so fishing is near and dear to my heart. Can you tell a little bit about what that problem was, and then how, with fishing rights, you guys helped solve that problem and do well for everyone?
Absolutely. The New England fisheries are part of a larger story that many fisheries have gone through over the years. This is a story of what happens when property rights are not well defined and markets can't operate well.
When you say rights, property rights, is that the areas where people can fish?
It can be the areas that people can fish. It can also be the lack of knowledge or uncertainty around how much fish you can catch. When you don't have that knowledge, there's a very strong incentive for people to compete with each other to maximize their catch, and of course that's not good for the fish population, which is the basis of that whole economy. So the solution that we came up with for that fishery and for many fisheries around the United States, and now increasingly in other countries, is to solve that economic problem by clarifying the rights around the harvest of fish and creating shares of the allowable catch, which is determined through science, using data. And again, like the acid rain example, that creates a long-term perspective. It creates an incentive for people to live within their limits and even perform better than that, because the more they conserve, in this case, the higher the asset value becomes, to the extent that they can actually sell that later and retire on it. This is very, very different from how fisheries have normally operated. The conventional wisdom is to not define the rights, let people fish as much as they want, and that leads to widespread decline and depletion.
Great. So what we're working together, and you're using technology to help provide some visibility to some of the problems. Is that right? Do we want to maybe show a little bit, and you can talk about how you're using data today to kind of help accelerate the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So I like to say that we like to manage the things that we can measure. You know, if you can't see something, it's out of sight, out of mind. The problem with global fisheries is that it's huge in dimensionality. It crosses the entire globe. There are data around, but the data are scattered in thick reports that nobody reads, in statistical tables that nobody consults. And we got the idea when we saw the Domo platform that Domo would be a powerful way to bring these disparate data together to make the invisible visible, to show the world that fisheries are not doing great right now, but they have tremendous potential to produce food, to increase profits for really poor fishermen and lift them out of poverty, to improve the nutritional status of the billions of people around the world who depend on seafood as a major source of their diet. And so to do that, we partnered with Domo to create this map of status. This is a snapshot of how about 7,000 fisheries around the world who have reported catch data to the United Nations over the last 50 years or so are doing. It's based on a model which takes the growth rates of these populations, looks at the catch rates and calculates the amount of fish in the water relative to target levels. So the green on this indicates countries that are managing their fish stocks quite well. That's where we have really lots of fish, good profits, people are making a good living, and ecosystems are pretty healthy. And the warmer colors indicate the fisheries that are not doing so well. And you can see at a glance, instead of looking through a whole bunch of numbers and a bunch of complicated charts, decision makers and fishermen and industry leaders can look at this map and at a glance understand that the status of the global fisheries are not that good.
Right. So before we wrap, I wanted to see of all the data points around the work that you do, what is the most compelling from an economic standpoint? We talked a little bit about ROI last night, and maybe you could just talk about that a little bit, and then I want to go to the audience and see what they can do, you know.
Sure. Well, here's another compelling set of data that Domo helped us produce. Again, this is another bioeconomic model that shows that fisheries, if managed on data and in an adaptive way, even in the face of climate change, can do much, much better than they are doing. It's an opportunity to feed billions of people and create lots and lots of jobs, tens of millions of jobs, because we can see here that with scientific management, fisheries can create about 30% more food. We can increase fishery profits by 100%, and we can do all that by leaving more fish in the water to help ecosystems function well. And here's our map of return on investment. This is based on a cost database. It shows that almost every fishery in the world can be a net benefit per dollar of investment, with some of these cases being in returning your investment many, many times. So it's a good deal for the environment. It's a good deal for people all around the world.
And anyone can get behind that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one project that we started with EDF. We're hoping that EDF will put more projects into the Domo for Good exchange. If this is something you care about, we would love your talents to help improve the health of our oceans and our supply chain. And with that, I want to thank you, Rod. It's been a great partnership.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay.